Is your agency leaking profit without you even realizing it? Chris Kille reveals how operational clarity and smart systems can protect margins, reclaim time, and accelerate growth.
When you start churning and the bottom starts falling out, it's like you're on the treadmill or sometimes even moving backwards.
Welcome to the DesignRush podcast, where we unpack how top innovators are reshaping the future of design, business, and technology. I'm your host, Kille Johnson. Today, I'm joined by Chris Kille, founder of EO Staff, serial entrepreneur, and systems strategist. With nearly 20 years in building, scaling, and exiting companies in payments and business services, Chris helps founders reclaim 10 to 20 plus hours a week and turn operations into growth engines. A recognized voice in operations and remote workforce strategy, he's been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, and 100 plus other outlets and serves on the Forbes Business Council. Chris shares how agency leaders can prevent margin erosion, implement high-efficiency systems, and create operational clarity that drives sustainable growth without founders being trapped in day-to-day tasks. If you lead a brand, agency, or tech team, hit subscribe. Every week, we share ideas shaping how creativity and tech power the next era of business. Chris, welcome to the DesignRush podcast. You've spent nearly 2 decades building, scaling, and fixing businesses from the inside. So I'm looking very forward to the discussion today. We're actually getting to talk about the operational leak that quietly drains profits from agencies long before anyone notices. Now, you've watched agency leaders scale revenue while personally burning out. So what is the earliest sign that a business is leaking profit, even before margins shrink or clients are actually complaining?
I think the signs are there when you're leaking is when you find yourself caught in the menial day-to-day, entry-level tasks, if you will. And a lot of us as founders, especially when we're just starting out, that is something that, the work has to get done, right? And so I would say rather than leaking, most times you're not able to realize the revenue that you should in the timeframes that you should because your energy's focused in the wrong place. That's the very first thing I look for whenever I start talking to a business.
I mean, founders are often convinced that they're delegating, but if you look at the scoreboard, it actually says otherwise, right? So what is the delegation myth that silently kills 10 to 20% of margin in growing agencies?
I know this. I've seen it over and over again. A lot of times people think they're delegating and they're going back and they are redoing or rechecking or constantly going back and forth with the person that they're delegating to because the instruction given wasn't clear or it wasn't understood properly. And what we found, there's a little trick and a process that we teach called the definition of done. And it's essentially a way to reverse engineer that delegation task where Kia, if I was to delegate something to you, right, rather than just saying, hey, I need you to go do this, right? It's like, okay, Kia, here's the thing that we're going to be working on together. Here's what it looks like when it's successfully completed. Now you have a starting point that you can actually work backwards from, as opposed to walking into the woods or shooting, into the sky without a real target. We found just one little tweak like that when delegating it's incredibly effective for everybody involved and makes it easier because you don't want to go back and have to redo things that defeats the entire purpose.
When agencies hit a growth plateau, leaders usually blame the sales or pipelines. So in your experience, what is actually the real operational choke point that causes the stall? And then why is it almost always, right? Always internal, not external?
I think looking at it, when you hit a growth standpoint, it's never, I don't want to say never, but it's rarely sales. It usually falls back on marketing and lead gen. And so, and that could be as simple as just putting out more content. That could be as simple as following up with the leads that you do get in. Most business owners, most agency owners that I talk to, if you go in and you actually take a look at their lead flow and their pipeline as to what's going on, they may reach out once or twice. And then, something else has gotten their attention or they decide, oh, this is a dead lead. There's a saying that the riches are in the niches and, the fortune is in the follow-up. And that's the thing. Most people don't buy until the 7th or 8th interaction. So either they are viewing and binging your content online, because each one of those counts as an interaction in my mind, or you're touching them over and over again, via DM, text message, phone call, whatever it is that your medium's doing. Most of the time, you can find an additional 15 to 20% revenue right away just by going into the CRM.
You've built a system that's helped you escape working at a $10 per hour level inside your own business. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest delegation mistake that keeps even successful CEOs tied up in routine work?
I think it's giving up. And look, it's funny that you said that about me, because I'm guilty of it myself. We actually had a meeting this morning, and I was like, all right, guys, I just got back from a vacation, and when I go on vacation, I can never completely unplug. And I think everybody who owns a business can understand that as well. You can never just forget about it, right? But you get out of the weeds and you're able to see the forest through the trees. And one of the things that I found that I'm very guilty of is I kept jumping back in, right? I would delegate something, or I would give ownership of a project or a task or a department or whatever it is to somebody else. But then I would still be like, hey, what's going on? I'm looking over your shoulder to make sure it's getting done. I don't know if I would do it that way. So it's really, you have to let go. And that's where we're all type A. We are all hard chargers. We all have this vision that we need to get to. And the ones who actually achieve that vision versus the ones who don't are the ones that can let go and trust that they've made the right hire and the trust that their team can get it done.
What's the point of then having the business if you're actually not letting go of that and leaving some of the, the duties over to those that you've actually tasked them with and trust them with? Because it is about trust at the end of the day. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to, if you can make a really good living doing everything yourself, right? But it's almost never good enough. Everybody wants to scale. Everybody wants that extra employee. Everybody wants the extra account. And without a solid team that has a game plan and a strong delegation, framework, you're never going to get there on your own.
Many agency CEOs, they assume that more clients equals more margin, but that formula often flips, right? So when does the operational crash happen, and why do CEOs not see it until it's too late?
I wish there was a definitive, concrete answer that would apply universally. But for our industry and for my business specifically, I can speak to, we start to notice there's the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of your customers are going to give you 80% of your revenue. And what we start to see is the bigger that we get, if we don't have the right support team if we don't have the right support team, in-house, the correct number of people, then our churn starts to ramp up. Right. The support drops. With us, it's all about training. It's all about onboarding, right? You onboard a new client. If you do it the right way in the beginning, they stay forever, usually. If you mess that up, right, or they don't get the attention that they need, then there's a higher % chance of churn. And churn is, what kills agencies. Churn is what kills businesses in general. If you can keep a customer over and over again with that monthly recurring revenue setup, if you're set up that way, then, sky's the limit. But when you start churning and the bottom starts falling out, it's like you're on the treadmill or sometimes even moving backwards.
If an agency wants to scale without margin erosion, then what's the first system they must first pressure test before adding more clients or more team members or even more service lines?
Yeah, I think that if you want to scale and you want to pressure test, you want to make sure that you can first support your current clients that you have, right? Before you start adding any more in the top. And to be able to do that is to make sure that your admin and operations need to be dialed in. They need to be dialed in completely. There needs to be making sure that, that tasks aren't slipping through the cracks, that leads aren't slipping through the cracks, that projects in your project management tool are actually getting completed, customers are being onboarded properly, that there's a process in place when someone's complaining or you start to get the inkling that they might be switching or want to leave or just canceling services altogether. Making sure that foundation, admin and ops, is arguably the foundation of any business. Making sure that that's dialed in and that everybody knows what the goal and the focus is and who is responsible for what, right? Who owns what. That's the number one thing that should be dialed in first before you start adding sales, before you start adding marketing.
If I'm a CEO and I'm overwhelmed right now, what is the one system that I could install within 7 days that delivers immediate operational clarity, would you say?
The very fastest way that, email is the biggest time suck that everybody has, right? It's a public to-do list that everybody has access to. And I'm willing to bet if your listeners have their computer open right now, I guarantee you that their Outlook or their Gmail tab is open right now. And one of the things that they likely do throughout the day is click, click, click. They're going from tab to tab to tab. It's something that we all do, right? When mine is up, it still happens. So I only check my email once a day. My assistant, Faye, is in my inbox all day long organizing. So I never see spam. I never see solicitations. I never see anything that doesn't require my attention because she understands, how we do things, where things are supposed to go, who does what. And she's in there directing traffic. She's triaging. And then if we get an email from somebody that requires immediate attention, she texts me or she lets the people know that, hey, this is Faye, Chris's assistant. I flagged this email. Chris checks his email every day at 4 p.m. So I'll make sure that he reviews this. And, everybody's in the loop. I'm not constantly getting distracted because when you keep your email open and you check it more than once or twice a day, your brain shifts. And in order to really grow and scale, you need to stay focused. And if you're constantly jumping from right brain to left brain, left brain, putting out fires, right, all day long, you don't get anything done. And I know that probably half the people who are listening have had those days where they wake up in the morning and they are just ready to go. They are, today's going to be the greatest day ever. And I am so motivated and I'm going to get so much accomplished and all this stuff. I'm ready to go on firing on all cylinders. They get in the office and they open their email. And all of a sudden that all deflates. Next thing they know, they look up, it's 2 p.m. and they haven't gotten anything done. And then their days, it's if they even get to it, the quality is going to be half of what it was had they have done it. So that is the very first thing that we teach is how to get email organized and get it out of your immediate periphery. Get it out of your immediate line of sight so you can focus on actually growing the business. And you're not abandoning it. You have somebody that's there making sure that, your house isn't going to burn down. There's somebody actually monitoring it. It's just not you.
Now, handoffs are one of the biggest margin killers in creative and digital agencies, especially hybrid ones. So how can leaders improve clarity and execution without actually adding more meetings or micromanagement?
Yeah, we use my creative team. We communicate through project management tools. And then for me, I have a living Google Doc or a Google Sheet that has everything in place. And for instance, if we're struggling, I'll just give you an example. Recently, we were having some issues with video editing where hooks were getting missed, and it just wasn't it, right? You're watching like, that just wasn't what I thought. So during one of my admin days, right, I have access to that, and I'll usually go in and I'll watch. The reels are less than 2 minutes, the finished ones usually, and so I'm able to communicate back and forth with the team. When I do have a chance to, again, it's just staying organized and having dedicated time blocks as to when I'm checking output.
Now, as teams, become mixes of in-house, remote, fractional AI and automation, what does a modern, high-efficiency support structure look like in 2025 and beyond?
What we do here internally is the base of everything is AI. So typically, we'll have our creative meetings. So just use that at the department again as an example, where we'll brainstorm. We come up with topics. We come up with, just kind of, a strategy as to what we're going to do this week or this month or this quarter. And then AI, whether it be ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever model you're using, that then that's the next step that we bring in, where we're going to feed that in and we're going to use this as the base to come out. And then from there, obviously we take that base that's been given to us, that additionally, essentially a more detailed framework. And then we take it back in the people who are in the departments, they own that, right? So they're using AI as the base, but we're not just copying, pasting, the M dashes out there where everybody can see it, Everybody knows it. I was like, oh, come on, guy, right? It's so cringe. And I've always written with normal dashes. And so when that came out, I was like, oh my gosh. It's just one dash, I promise. It's not an M dash. So we use AI as the base, as I think everybody else should, right? And that use it as the framework. And then we'll go back and, we review it that way. And then we feed it back in again and ask for its feedback. And, and just continuing to do that until we have the output that we're looking for. So, and one person owns. So we have a person that runs ads. We have our graphic designer who's solely responsible for graphics and carousels. We have our video editor who's only responsible for editing videos. And then we have our creative director who just kind of oversees the entire process and make sure that make sure that the definition of done, what's coming out of the machine is the output that we were looking for when we dreamed it up.
WPP just unveiled WPP Open Pro. So this is like letting brands plan, create, and obviously publish their own ads using AI. So this looks like it's the beginning of the great agency bypass. I mean, for you, when the world's largest agency is actually empowering clients to produce campaigns without a creative department, what would you then say is the real operational straight? And what's actually the opportunity that most agencies are then missing?
I think the opportunity is to learn how to work with it as opposed to fight it, right? You can't stop AI, right? It's coming whether you like it or not. But so many people out there, they are, the sky's falling. We're all going to lose our jobs. I don't think that's the case. Are there going to be a lot of jobs that are absorbed and eliminated because of AI? Absolutely. And that's going to be, you had mentioned, copywriting, editorial and stuff like that. That's a tough one, right? Where they may not be wiping out entire departments, but you may not need 10 editors anymore. Maybe you just need one to make sure that the machine is running, the way it's supposed to. Same thing with ads. I mean, you look at what's been happening recently where it's just finding ways to work with instead of fighting against. Fighting against is futile. It's not gonna, you have to find other opportunities. Remember this, when one door closes, another one opens. And so being able to be creative, and that's even something that you can lean into AI and ask, hey, here's the situation. Here's what's going on. We need to be able to pivot. Like, what can we do? And so, again, fighting it's not going to make it go away. Bitching about it, crying about it, it's not going to make it go away. You got to find a way to work with it.
If AI compresses production costs towards zero, what becomes the new high-value service that agencies must master over the next 24 months to stay relevant in this type of changing landscape, would you say?
You got to lean into service. That's the thing, because when we're going into, the customer is always going to need to be supported, always 100% of the time. And when you take that personal touch out of any relationship, you now turn it into a commoditized relationship. And there's no, when you lose that personal touch, then that's when you really start to worry about things, because then you open your door to price, you open your door to different features and things. But when you have that personal one-to-one relationship with that client that you have, it makes they're stickier. It makes it harder to leave. And again, they're still going to need you as that trusted resource. They don't understand AI, right? They don't understand what's going on. You as the agency still need to make sure that you understand the trends that are happening and why. Because if you can't, somebody's going to need to explain that to the customer, and there's always going to be value in that.
If clients genuinely shift their spend away from outsourced creative work to building their own operational efficiency and automation, what would you then say is the smartest pivot agency CEOs can make right now to remain indispensable in 2025 and beyond?
The CEO's number one responsibility is to watch the market and see where you need to be able to predict where things are going, not where they're at right now. So having that future vision is paramount. I do think bringing things in-house is, or at least, if you're completely outsourced, bringing things in-house to give a little bit more control over, leaning into being able to support your customers. Because again, without that human touch, without that account manager, whatever it is that you want to call it, that human interaction and relations with your customer, it's a lot easier for somebody to leave. And so, as the CEO, you may not be able to, you're probably not going to be in that position where you're still touching customers and things like that. That's not feasible, right? If you want to grow the company. So having somebody in-house that understands the need, that knows where the company's going and understands that need to, it's preservation at that point. So, having that person that you trust that can interact with the customers, making sure the fires are put out whenever they come around. And that's very important.
I would love to hear from you if you have any parting words for anyone that's either perhaps an established agency looking to maybe change things about, or maybe, just up and coming, kind of just trying to find that footing, or even just like general parting words that you'd like to give us today, maybe some advice, anything like that, especially for the year that's coming up now for 2026.
Most times when I'm talking to people, and especially when we start talking about delegation and VAs and how they can help, most people don't understand what they can do, right? That's actually the big, they're like, well, what do they do? What can they do? So we actually put together a guide that breaks it all out. We call it the ultimate guide to virtual assistants. And basically any scenario, whether it be marketing, sales, admin, operations, or executive support, it's essentially, it's a guide as to what they can do and the best way to utilize them. Which I think obviously leaning into, being able to become as efficient as possible in 2026 is going to be paramount to anything, because again, revenues might be shrinking. If that's the case, you have to look at the team and how efficient, you can make your team. And that's a great way it's a great place to start.
Chris, we've come to the end of our conversation. This has been so wonderful. It has been powerful, and I appreciate your insights that you shared with us today. Thank you for joining us on the DesignRush podcast.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Curious about what top brands look for when choosing an agency? Tune into our latest episodes where we reveal the decision-making secrets of leading brands. Subscribe to the DesignRush podcast and stay ahead of the competition.